Hello everybody and welcome to Opportunity China's Teach China Graduate Programme update session on today, the 22nd of July 2021. Thank you all once again for joining us for our update session this month, and thank you to those who are returning, having viewed our session last month. Before we begin, it's probably worth me stating that following the previous 30 days, we have not had a huge number of updates, either positive or negative, in addition to the content from our previous webinar, but we will look to both repeat and hammer down some of those key points that we made back in June today, as well as update you with any of the limited number of updates that have arisen since July. So let's get cracking straight away. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Those of you who have questions, please feel free to pop them into our chat box, and our Opportunity China coordinators will get back to you as quickly as possible. In addition to that, if you have any questions that you don't want to ask live but want to put to us a little bit later on, please feel free to email them to info@opportunity-china.com. Please make sure any questions that you have at the moment are emailed to that email address, info@opportunity-china.com, as it's the best and most efficient way for a member of staff to be able to get back to you. You might feel that it might be a little more direct or efficient in emailing your coordinator directly, but actually we are really recommending sending it to that info box, so any of our members of staff will be able to get back to you with any questions that you have straight away. So let's crack on and take a look at today's session focus. Today, we are going to, first of all, issue an update on the COVID situation in China as it stands at the moment. We'll be taking a look at the impact that this will have on programme start dates, any implications for visa and immigration policies that are still in place. We'll also be taking a brief look at vaccine, quarantine and China arrival policies at present. We'll be introducing the summer training dates that we now have and that many of you will have received emails about. And we'll also be going over some frequently asked questions and answering any questions that pop up in our chat as well. Please remember, if you don't want to ask any questions in our chat throughout today, but you have something that you want to bring up with an Opportunity China coordinator, please do email the info@inbox. So let's take a look at the current situation in China. Well, at the moment, there are currently just under 1.5 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine that has been administered. In China, the calculations for counting the number of people vaccinated or vaccines given is a little complicated. So it's probably worth me clarifying this, as you'll find a whole lot of information online and it might not necessarily be quite clear, as it's done quite differently to how we do it in the United Kingdom, or indeed how it's done in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa and Ireland. Instead of counting a percentage number of people who have received first vaccines and second vaccines, China counts all of its vaccinations according to how many individual inoculations have been done. So we don't necessarily know for a fact what the percentage of people who've received their first vaccine is in China at the moment, or the second vaccine in China. There are certain numbers that are bandied about and certain releases that are made. All we know for sure is that currently just under 1.5 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine have been administered in China. That is more than any other country in the world, and it accounts for 40% of the global administered vaccines in the world. So 40% of vaccinations that have happened in the whole world have been done in China. That gives you a little bit of an idea as to the scope and the speed at which China is currently vaccinating its population. In addition to this, China is also issuing strong guidance to all of its local municipalities, cities, counties to ensure that lockdowns are stringent and that lockdowns are fast and efficient and effective when coronavirus cases are discovered. Currently in China, it's working on a local isolation level. There have been a limited number of lockdowns in places such as Chengdu in the outskirts of Beijing within the last few months, where cases have been identified quickly through mass testing, locked down, and squashed. If you're looking to live and work in a place that is the safest from coronavirus in the world at the moment, you really can't look that much further than China. However, what this does mean is that entry restrictions are very much still in place. In China, people are very cautious and very careful of the virus. People will still be wearing masks even when there are barely any cases at all in a country of 1.4 billion people. People still take a very strong level of precaution. There is certainly no Freedom Day or throwing caution to the wind currently ongoing in the country. And because of this, entry restrictions are still very much in place and are still among the most restrictive and strict in the world. These entry restrictions are still very much the same as was discussed in the last webinar, and we are still expecting a late autumn, around November, anticipated start date. There is currently discussion that some of you might have heard of there being a herd immunity target of 83.3% of China's population being fully vaccinated. This was issued by one of China's top epidemiologists and spoken about to quite some fanfare over the last few months. It's important to state that this number is not official government policy. This number is not something that is certain. When 83.3% of the population is vaccinated, everyone will be able to go back in. But it is an indication that China is thinking about these things and is slowly creaking its door open. Now, these start dates are, of course, subject to change. China is reactive in its attitude towards coronavirus, and it is strong, quick, and efficient. If cases begin to rise or get out of control, if there is a new variant of concern, this start date may well be pushed back, depending on the country you're from. And so a flexible approach is definitely still required. It's also really important to stress that no matter what you read in chatter on Facebook groups or anything like that, keep an eye on official policy. Don't keep an eye on rumour mongering. We are not here to issue rumours. We're not here to issue speculation as fact. We're here to give you the facts. We're here to give you statements that we know, having spoken to people on the ground in China, and to keep you updated on your journey. And with that, Opportunity China is incredibly flexible with start dates, and we will support all of our participants with their preferences. So once again, as I stated in the last session, if you would like to defer your place to February 2022, that option is certainly still open to you. We can be very flexible with that. If you would like to defer your entry to a date after February 2022, March, April, May, don't worry about that either. You don't necessarily have to go out in February. If you're concerned about having to go out and have signed a contract recently for a job that goes on longer, please just speak to us, drop us an email, let us know. We're willing to be very flexible with this, as flexible as we can be. So in terms of school matching, we will start this as soon as it is viable for your nationality. There are going to be some locations that will likely issue PU letters before others. There are a small number of locations that have in the last few months been able to issue PU letters to certain participants. Now, just because some people have got PU letters doesn't necessarily mean that you will certainly be able to get PU letters. It's partly on a city-by-city basis. For instance, if certain schools in Shenzhen are issuing PU letters, it means it would be more likely, if you want to go to Shenzhen, that you'd be able to get a PU letter, but not necessarily 100% certain. In the same way, some schools and some institutions are able to issue PU letters due to their relationship with the government, due to the trust being placed in their institution by the government, and others may not be able to. This is particularly the case when looking at private schools and public school institutions. It may be more likely that the public school institution will be more likely to be able to get a PU letter earlier than a private school. Once again, as I mentioned last time, if you are flexible about the location and the type of school that you would like to go to, please do let us know. Drop us an email to info@opportunity-china.com, because these PU letters will be issued by some institutions before they'll be issued by others. Now, please do not mistake this by me saying we've currently got hundreds of PU letters and opportunities open for participants to go to one or two particular schools, as this isn't the case. But it will be likely that if you are able to be flexible about your location, or don't necessarily mind so much what city or what school you go to, then it may be more likely that we'll be able to get you matched and headed out to China earlier. We are still, though, looking at that autumn start date as being the very earliest, in all likelihood, that you'll be able to get out. At present, a limited number of schools can obtain PU letters. So, a limited number, we do mean a limited smaller number, which is why I state, if you have a preference, please do state it. More PU letters are also currently being issued to Canadian, Australian and American citizens than citizens from the UK, Ireland and South Africa in particular. So what are the implications for this for visa and immigration? Well, there is a slightly more complex work permit and visa application process, but it's certainly not rocket science, and it's not anything that you should particularly concern yourself with enormously or fret about. One of the biggest changes is the PU letter, which I've mentioned a few times already. Those of you who have joined for previous sessions will know all about. A PU letter is essentially now a strict requirement for immigration purposes, in addition to your work permit notification letter. It is applied for by your school to the government. The government will only issue a limited number. And when I say the government, I mean local governments within each city. Each city or municipality will issue a certain number of PU letters, will perhaps have a quota. We don't know what that quota is, and will also have partners who they will issue them to and partners who they will not issue them to. So that PU letter is very important at the moment. Quarantine in China. This varies from city to city, location to location. Schools will still cover your cost. It is done in hotel accommodation. They are always nice hotels. You might have heard some horror stories of people going to certain areas in Beijing. These happen very early on. There have been absolutely no real issues in terms of hotel quarantine. You'll get full meals each time you go there, but it is restrictive, and you do need to be prepared to be in a room for a minimum of 2 weeks. Flight availability and connection has also been affected. So there are currently direct flights going between the North American countries and China, but when it comes to the United Kingdom and Ireland, you will still need to get a connecting flight. Just to very quickly tell you what connecting airports you're able to take, you will need to have a test done in transit, and there are only certain airports that you can do that in. If you're flying from the UK to China, these airports are Amsterdam Schiphol, Copenhagen Airport, Frankfurt Airport, Helsinki Airport, Vienna International Airport, and Zurich Airport. If you're flying from any of these cities, you will, in transit, take a second coronavirus test, as these will be both a PCR and an IgM antibody test. So currently no direct flights between the UK and China. When it comes to vaccinations, China only recognises Chinese vaccines currently for visa purposes. And when I say for visa purposes, if you have had a Chinese vaccine, a Sinopharm or Sinovac vaccine, or two Sinopharms and Sinovac vaccines, and having waited 14 days afterwards, you do not need a PU letter. However, this will certainly not be the case for, I would imagine, any of you, as these vaccines are not administered in most Western countries. So unless you've popped over to Hungary, Serbia, Mexico, and gotten yourself a Sinopharm or Sinovac vaccine in any of those countries, unfortunately, your Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, or Janssen cannot be used in lieu of a PU letter. Only Sinopharm, and Sinovac. If you have had 2 vaccines, however, there is some evidence that it may potentially help with a PU letter application. In certain cities, there are some processes where PU letters have been applied for and rejected because an applicant has not had 2 vaccines, and that's any vaccine, and have been accepted because an applicant has had 2 vaccines, and those can be any vaccines. But the most important thing to say is if you have had a non-Chinese vaccine, you cannot use that in lieu of a PU letter. If you've had a Chinese vaccine by whatever stroke of luck, then you can. You do not need to have a PU letter, and your whole journey to China is a lot easier. Without a Chinese vaccine, that PU letter is very much required for the work permit application. Make sure that you keep evidence of your vaccination, no matter what vaccination you have had. There have been some people who have been asking a question, as China is currently looking at approving the BioNTech Fosun vaccine. BioNTech, as some of you might be aware, is the company that works with Pfizer for that vaccine. We currently do not have any news whatsoever on whether the Pfizer vaccine will be recognized as a Chinese vaccine in the future. We do not wish to speculate. If anyone has any questions, if they say, I've had a Pfizer vaccine, will that be accepted as a Chinese vaccine once this Fosun BioNTech one has been done? The answer to that at the moment is we do not know, but as with everything, we're keeping an eye on it. In terms of consular services and getting your visa sorted out, most consular services have reopened in most countries now. Documents can be legalized and visas can be applied for. However, in the majority of these consular offices, there are still restricted days and times for you to do certain things. Please do check on the online FAQs, notices, and news sections on your local Visa for China website, or on your embassy or consulate website, your nearest embassy or consulate website for China. For general inquiries, make sure that you email all the email contacts that you can find. Sometimes Visa for China centres and consular services can be very slow or very vague about which particular department you should contact. So please ensure that you send an email to pretty much everyone at once, and someone will get back to you quicker. In terms of stages to get into China itself, I need to remind you and to preempt any questions with this by saying that this is certainly under subject to change, and we are always keeping track of this. Make sure that you collate all required documents that you need. Generally, these are your degree certificate, a DBS basic check, or equivalent in your own country, so a state police check in the United States, Royal Canadian Mounted Police check in Canada, etc. Notarize and authenticate all of the relevant documents. You can go to our website in our visa section for authentication and notification information. A really great step-by-step guide for each country is available there for you to use. Send these documents across to your partner school. You'll have full support whilst you're doing this. Then the work permit notification and PU letter will be applied for. Currently, there's no rhyme or reason as to why or how long these will take to be applied for, but we would say to allow at least 1 month minimum for this. Once you receive the work permit notification letter and PU letter, you can then apply for your visa at the Visa for China Centre or embassy that's closest to you. You will then want to ensure that you book and take a private COVID PCR and IgM test within 48 hours of your flight. That's if you're flying direct. If you're transferring, you'll need to do that first of all, and then You will also need to take another PCR and IgM test if you are transferring at your transfer airport destination. So if you're looking at booking flights and you can't get any direct flights, make sure that the airport that you're transferring in is able to conduct COVID tests, both PCR and IgM, on site and before going through immigration. In terms of our summer training dates, here are a few of our key dates. We've got our pre-departure webinar series. These can be caught up at any time, but it is definitely best if you're able to join them on the 17th, 18th and 19th of August. Our training day, we encourage you all please to join live Thursday the 26th from 2 till 5:30 BST. Mandarin lessons will be from mid-September. Here's what you can do in the meantime. You can take a TEFL course. This will certainly be a requirement for the majority of you. And there's absolutely no hurry with this, but remember that the certificate will never expire and it's something very useful to be able to do. A 120-hour online qualification is the minimum that you will need. You can contact us if you would like to discuss courses, and you can also go to discounted courses from our website, opportunity-china.com/TEFL discount. So let's move on to some questions. Mandy, what about Johnson & Johnson? So Johnson & Johnson, I do apologise, I used its other name for that when I was talking about vaccines. Janssen is Johnson & Johnson, and no, it's not a Chinese vaccine, unfortunately, Mandy. So unfortunately, it's not accepted or recognised as one, only Chinese vaccines. In terms of our emails, please do email info@opportunity-china.com. That's the best place for us to be able to pick up any information at present as well. Does anyone else have any questions just at the moment that they want to put through? Okay, in which case, please do make sure that if you do have any questions and you want to send them over to us, please email them to info@opportunity-china.com and we'll be more than happy to get straight back to you. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media. We are still active on them. Remember our email address, emailing the info box. And please do keep track of information on opportunity-china.com. We do have a COVID updates page. We'll be putting this video up there for everyone to watch. But thank you very much for those of you who have joined us today. And please don't be afraid to just drop us an email with any further questions. Thank you all very much and goodbye.